Welcome back to another episode of the 5-Star Tour podcast with JB and Millie.
Hey guys!
And I am aware that I just said 5-Star Tour, but I think that's because this is the second part of our Valentine's Day celebrations, the first one being Millie's Island Tour on Animal Crossing. So I just want to promote that before the episode. And I'm really happy with what we're doing for Valentine's Day so far. So there's that island tour. I'm going to link that in the description down below because I know a lot of people listening to this do like Animal Crossing. But that really isn't the topic of this special episode. So there's no guest today, but we are both here to talk about WandaVision.
Oh my god, indeed, yes. Oh, I'm loving it so much.
So we're going to kind of go episode by episode and talk about some of the other things that they've released, such as maybe some interviews, some of the things we've heard, and we're also going to talk about the new Funko Pops that they've announced for them and that they've released. So this is going to be a very packed show, and I'm really, really excited. So it's kind of on the theme, I guess. It's about a couple, so it's a Valentine's Day special.
Yeah, indeed. So I guess like you said, if we're working through the episodes, we are going to start all the way back in the 50s.
Well, maybe we can start even before that with a quick question of when you first saw the trailer or when you first heard about this series or even just the Disney Plus Marvel TV shows in general, what was your opinion on that?
Okay, so I'm a newbie to Marvel, and so I was a bit like, I guess I'm not really going to get it. I don't get the backstories. But wow, like, my initial impressions were completely wrong. I remember being like, oh, will you watch these with me? And I was like, yeah, sure, thinking that I was going to be like, just sat on my phone, sat on the Switch, just trying to like say I was watching them. But no, it's a ritual. Every Friday, all devices down, and I'm watching.
Yeah, like some things I am absolutely hooked on. So usually if there's something on in the background, I'll take some time off to like play some Minecraft or something. But when these Disney Plus shows on, when WandaVision's on, you're right, it is just focused on the screen.
And some of the episodes, well, obviously we're going to touch on them all, but so much happens in some of them, and we're that excited by them, and JB and his brother used to watch Marvel together, that we'll then go and sit with his family to rewatch the episode on Friday night, just to kind of get their reactions to things as well, just because the episodes are that good.
Oh, and another quick shameless plug for the channel. We actually did a WandaVision speed build on Animal Crossing, and that's actually one of my favourite videos of all time. So that will also be linked down below as well. But I guess you're quite right. Now, full spoiler warning, we're not going to outright, go out of our way to like troll anyone and just blurt things out. But we are going to be talking about these episodes with the kind of understanding that everyone listening to this has seen all those episodes.
Yeah, that they're at least up to date.
But we will at least give you some warnings about what episode we're talking about. So when we talk about episode 1, we're not just going to reveal a big twist in episode 5. It's all going to kind of be as they come. Which is good because I think that's the best way to go about this.
Okay, so episode number 1. Wow. I think it's fair to say slightly confused initially, because you were like, okay, there's this Marvel show starting, so I was like, okay, we're gonna get Tony Stark flying in his suit, Captain America's gonna be there with a shield, and then we see this rather comedic couple on the screen. It's a bit like this isn't Marvel. And even by the end of that episode, I just didn't get a Marvel feel to it. Now, JB is like up on all the Marvel comic books and everything. I'm the outsider, so he's gonna like go into more detail on this and explain why it all makes sense. But to me, I was just like, yeah, this is just a normal TV show. Your mum even loved that first episode because she was so excited that it was like some of the old TV shows she watched when she was younger, like Bewitched and stuff. So she was like, oh my gosh, we're watching this. I didn't know this was on TV. And we actually had to take the time out to be like, no, it's different. Yeah. It's just based on this.
I mean, one thing we didn't do, which is what I would have tried to have convinced you to do if it was a movie, so I'm a bit ashamed that I didn't, consider this. But one thing we didn't do is go back throughout all the films for some background information. Yeah. So, in terms of what you remembered about Wanda and Vision before we watched episode 1 and episode 2, because they were released on the same day, how much did you remember them, or what was your background going into it?
Okay, so I will admit that I haven't watched all the Marvel movies as in-depth as I should have. Predominantly Ultron is the one that's standing out that I didn't pay enough attention to. So my kind of knowledge of them was like Infinity War, where Vision's got the stone removed from his head, Wanda's, you know, obviously in a very distressed state, and I guess because Vision was there, I actually didn't link the two. I've been watching WandaVision as its own separate entity. We're going to come on to that a bit later down the line where they start to link together, but certainly for the first few episodes, I was just seeing it as an individual entity, I think. What about you? Because you have seen these movies over and over and over again. You know all the kind of drama from Ultron and all that sort of thing. So what did you think when you saw Wanda and Vision on the screen together, apparently in the 1950s?
I mean, I pretty much remembered everything. Like, I haven't read all of the kind of companion graphic novels linking to it. Like, I'm familiar with some of the comic elements, but by no means am I an expert. I've barely read anything with Wanda and Vision in. I've read the Civil War book, I've read the Age of Ultron book, but they're very different to their film adaptations, to be honest. So what I know about these characters is just what it's shown in the movies, and so I feel like I know quite a lot, so it was a bit odd to see them in this setting, but you kind of know what it's setting up, you know, and I'm glad that they released 2 episodes at first, but it was difficult, because they really did commit to it, like those first 2 episodes, like, you could almost have been watching the wrong thing, almost.
Yeah.
But they commit to it really well, and I think they do a really good job. And one thing I really like is it just builds them up as a couple. So the first 2 episodes is, I feel like, me personally, I actually got invested in it from what they were trying to present. Like, it wasn't just, here's Paul Bettany as Vision, here's Elizabeth Olsen as Scarlet Witch, and this is how they are in the movies, and so that's why I care about it. It was, okay, here's a couple, and they actually had this funny drama. Like, I actually found myself going, oh, like, this is genuinely funny. Like, it's hilarious how Wanda thinks that she has to get done up for their anniversary, and that's her drama, and how Vision's like, oh no, I need to impress my boss.
Yeah,
like,
it's funny.
So I actually found real drama within the sitcom settings that they were trying to say, as opposed to, I wonder where this is going. And I think that's the biggest credit I can give to those first 2 episodes, especially episode 1 that we're talking about, is it makes you think about the world as Wanda sees it, first and foremost, and then that makes, you know, because if you're just looking for things to go wrong, then it's a very different show, and I think that's what makes that, you know, when Mr. Hart starts to choke, and he starts repeating himself and getting a bit out of character.
Yeah, that's the first time you start to see that there's something even remotely wrong with this world.
But because I was so involved and invested in that sitcom storyline, it was genuinely like, oh my gosh, like, they've full on taken me out of it by giving me, I guess, what you'd expect, and I just think that that's absolutely amazing.
Yeah, I'd agree. And like you said, they released 2 episodes together. So if we then start to look at the second episode, Don't Touch That Dial, I think that they needed to release these 2 episodes together, because the second one starts to give us more context. It's where it becomes a bit more like the MCU. You hear, you know, Wanda, what's happening to you, Wanda? What are they doing to you? And you start to realise that there is some greater outside power. Still unsure as to what that was at this stage. It almost seemed like there was somebody controlling Wanda by the language they were using there.
Yeah, and it does enough, and this is what I like, and this is, I don't, it's not like one of my favourite things in the Marvel, well, it probably is, to be honest, but it's not to the point where, like, I'm gonna go on, like, forums and stuff to defend it, but it always annoys me when I hear, like, negative reviews of, like, the first 2 episodes saying, well, I don't know what they were going for, because, like, clearly after, like, 19, you know, or, like, 20, 21 movies, they know what they're doing at this point, and it's not just like they're gonna make a whole entire series based on a 1950s sitcom. Like, clearly it's building up to something, and I feel like episode 1 and 2 give you enough to kind of go, oh, well, this is an indication at something. Like, I think this is the episode that has that red aeroplane, isn't it?
Yes,
Or
it
helicopter?
is. And it's also when you start to see the blood as well, that's the second thing that has the colour. But just picking up on what JB was saying there, the MCU has so many much loved characters. So we have Captain America, for example, who does have quite a lot of backstory at the start of his first movie. And I guess that's what the first episode was doing. It was building context, it was introducing characters, it was setting up the love that Wanda and Vision have for each other. You were meeting a few characters like Agnes, who, you know, we'll discuss a bit later on because she's not too prominent just yet. Theories start to arise a bit later. But yeah.
I think I might have come up with a theory. So I'm not sure if this is going to be spoilers or if any other YouTubers have spoken about this. And I guess this isn't really a spoiler, obviously, it's in the little visual we've got. But obviously Wanda's comic book accurate costume is red, and when we see her doing the kind of magic, it's red. And the only colour that seeps through in these first 2 episodes is red.
Oh.
So I don't know if that's connected or if it's just some like visual kind of indication, but that's interesting.
It is really interesting.
But it is, I don't know, the first 2 episodes I think are in a way not the best, but they're the most committed to the theme that it's trying to go with.
Yeah, I mean, you know, JB's spoken in the past about how they even used the old cameras and things for this. They really committed to what it was they were trying to produce, even in the production style, as well as the recording equipment, all that sort of thing. So they were 2 very impressive episodes, and at the end of the second one, we see things transforming, so it's all in colour.
It's weird though, because I can't tell if I'd rather they go the Netflix route and they just released all the episodes in one go, or if I'm happy that they're releasing 1 a week, because it's something to look forward to. And I think definitely, I think they've increased their lifespan in terms of the show. So if they released all of them like a Netflix show all in one go, then you'd have YouTubers, you know, big YouTubers, small YouTubers going, you know, here's the hidden secrets in WandaVision, here's all you need to know, here's the breakdown of the series, like almost treating it like a movie. Like, there's a review, there's some videos, and then that's it. We just take it as that MCU project, and that's good, but it's done. What's the next thing? Whereas now it's like every single week it's trending on Twitter, there's theories, there's different videos, there's people wondering what's going on, there's even like fake leaks. Like, obviously this is debunked, this is absolutely fake from what I've heard, but there's like cameos, I've seen like fake cameos from like Magneto. People are trying to like render Magneto into this show.
No, it leaves a lot more speculation. And do you know what, like, I feel like, given, you know, the state of the world right now, like the pandemic and stuff, people need that reason to be reaching out and talking to people when you can't go and see them. And just releasing 1 episode a week is leaving so much room for speculation that it gets people talking more, and I feel like that is important to do.
Here's what I think. I think I agree, but I almost think they should have released maybe the first 3 in week 1.
Or 2 every week.
Yeah, I think 2 every week would be, I don't know. See, look, just 3, I just feel that they would have, and I admire them for not, but the first 2 are so committed to that theme that in a way I don't blame the people that watched them and just thought, oh, this isn't for me.
Yeah, this isn't Marvel. But no, they did build up to something that is developed on quite well. So it moves on to episode 3. Now,
do you want to talk about the episode 1 and 2 Funko Pops now, after episode 1 and 2, or did you want to do that later?
No, I guess we can do it now.
So, the Funko Pop collection, this is what they've released as of recording. So there's 5 of them.
Yeah, there is. There's a 50s Wanda, a 50s Vision, which we'll discuss now, and then we'll come on to the other ones as their episodes kind of happen. But yeah, so the first two are in the black, white, grey colours to kind of reflect what was shown on those episodes. You've got Wanda in the kind of typical housewife attire with the apron, the big hair, and Vision like when he heads off to the office with the little hat and glasses and a briefcase. They're both really sweet. I like them. And Wanda's holding the lobster from the first episode when she's cooking for the hearts.
Oh, yeah, and it ends up on the door.
Yeah, the little door knocker.
They're actually really great Funko Pops. I feel that these two especially, and it's almost very good marketing, because I feel that in good conscience, maybe this is just me being a reckless spender, but I couldn't get 50s Wanda without getting 50s Vision as well.
Yeah, no, I'd agree with you.
Just to like have them there, because they're so good. And I love Funko Pops. Some people don't like Funko Pops, but I really love them. And I just feel like they've done such a fantastic job with these WandaVision ones. And in terms of the first two episodes, I can't think of any that I'm disappointed that there isn't. They could have had an Agnes one, but I don't think that would have been as good. There's none really that are missing.
No, I guess not. I feel like those two were ideal, and I think they've done them very well now. We do have these two Funkos. We are going to unbox them on the channel, so turn on notifications and subscribe for that.
Here's one thing that would be cool. So there's these Funko Pop like sets called Movie Moments. I got you one recently. I got you one today. It was that Harry and Voldemort one. It's like a Funko Pop recreation of a scene. I feel that if they're going to do more of these, I would like a movie moment version of all the trailers that they're doing. So a black and white desk, two people behind that desk, and that toaster on the desk. And I think that I don't know how well that they would do. But I think if they'd made like a movie moments equivalent for every one of those adverts, it'd be pretty cool.
Do you know what? I think the adverts are so prominent. Like, they were some of JB's favourite parts in the first two episodes, just because you get your Hydra, your Stark references. And also, one question for you, JB, about the first two episodes here.
Oh no.
You obviously are more familiar with the MCU than I am, so I'm going to ask. How did you feel? Like, did you feel like they referenced back to Wanda's life quite well? You know when she was acting a bit weird when the hearts came over and they were like, oh yeah, it's a Sokovian greeting and that sort of stuff. Did you like them having that reference back?
Yes, because
just mentioning Sokovia and stuff.
Because obviously she's from Sokovia, and they mentioned it briefly when but not really. They mentioned it in Civil War after Age of Ultron, in that when General Ross is going through why there's a need for the Sokovia Accords, they show a picture, they show a video clip of the Battle of New York, and Tony Stark looks a bit miffed. They show an image from the Washington DC fight, Falcon looks a bit upset, and then they show Age of Ultron, the Sokovia battle, and of course Wanda's from there, so she's the one that looks upset in that scene. But that's the only time that they've mentioned it. So for all it was just used for a joke, it's nice to know that they haven't forgotten about Sokovia and I guess just that origin, which is nice.
No, it was good. I'm really pleased. And like I said, I just wanted to get your opinion on that. So then things progress to Now in Colour, which was the name of episode 3, where we see perhaps the quickest pregnancy in history and the delivery of the two sons. Now, JB was, I think it's fair to say, excited all throughout this episode, talking about two names that didn't mean anything to me at the time, but Speed and Wiccan.
Oh my gosh, yes, because I just couldn't shut up about it, because it was just amazing, because what they were talking about, that what are they going to call their children, Billy or Tommy, and I was like, okay, they have two, it's Wiccan and Speed. Now, for those of you that don't know, Wiccan is basically the Scarlet Witch twin that Scarlet Witch has, and Speed is of course the Quicksilver twin that Scarlet Witch has. In the comics, of course, that could be very different going forward, but oh my gosh, when I think, what is it? Who comes out first? I think it's Tommy that comes out first.
Yeah, because Vision gives up his kind of choice in name, and it's Tommy.
And honestly, the second Tommy came out and Vision went over and was like, oh, I've missed it. I was like, no, there's
still another one, because I was looking at her belly like, would her belly still be that big, Millie? Is this normal? And then baby number 2 arrived.
And it's so good. And I just think it's amazing. It's definitely, and this is bad, but I think in total, it's my least favourite episode so far of the 6 episodes that they've released so far. But I think it's a phenomenal episode because Wanda starts off as pregnant, and you kind of know that, obviously, there's an end goal.
Yeah.
And I'm just really glad that we could see it. And it's, again, another very, very funny episode that not only uses the style of that 70s sitcom, but also it actually has some genuinely good jokes, like with all the analogies from babies being fruit to that subplot of the Doctor wanting to go on holiday, which is then eventually used to be like a hint about the world. Yeah. I just think they've done such a good job with this. And
they did do very well.
And I don't know, I don't think there's much to say about episode 3, really.
We also see a bit of a lapse in Wanda's powers when she can't get rid of the pelican. And of course, we have the new character.
Yes. What are they called? They're Geraldine in the world, and it seems like they're from the outside world by the end of it. Which is cool, because they mention Ultron as well, who I believe is another character who hasn't been mentioned since their film.
Yeah.
But Ultron's good, and here's the thing. I don't think that I think Age of Ultron is going to go down in anyone's estimations as the worst Avengers movie. I think that's definitely accurate. But some of my favourite Avengers moments are from Age of Ultron, like that party scene that they all have bonding together where they're trying to lift Thor's hammer. The scene where they all have that discussion at the end about what would happen if you put Thor's hammer in the elevator. Even some of like the battle scenes, like where they're all in a circle in Sokovia. Some of my favourite scenes are from Age of Ultron. Yeah. And it's just good because that's what they have to go through. And it's not like they're coming out here fully capitalising on the snap or from Infinity War or calling back to more popular films. They're going, okay, so Age of Ultron wasn't everyone's favourite, but we're almost going to add to the layers of that film. And I just really appreciate it, even down to these adverts, like you were saying. The first one's definitely a reference to the Stark bomb that threatened Wanda and Quicksilver in childhood. And so I just like how almost, I think, watching this series will make watching these old movies a bit better. Because one thing that I didn't like is how they kind of hinted at Wanda and Vision getting together, or at least having feelings, in Age of Ultron. They also kind of hint at that again in Civil War, but then you just have to fast forward your mind in Infinity War, and it's, oh, okay, they're together now, and then just like in a split second, like Vision's gone, and that's sad, but I don't think you really understand how bad that is for Wanda, because you just don't see any of that development.
Yeah.
Whereas I've got to be honest, after watching these 6 episodes, going back to see that interaction with Wanda and Vision in Infinity War, I think that's going to have a lot more meaning to it.
See, one of my most prominent scenes for Wanda is when they're in Wakanda. And everyone's like, why wasn't she here before when they're fighting? Because she literally rocks the entire ground. And it's like, she is possibly the most powerful of all the Avengers. Why don't they utilise her?
It's an interesting question. I guess the obvious answer in the film is if she used her full powers, there'd be no movie. Like, imagine in the middle of like Infinity or Endgame in that fight, if she were to use some of the world-bending powers that she has in this show. Like, obviously we're going to talk more about that later, but it's no secret up to this point that she can, manipulate matter itself. And so if she just used that on Thanos' army, she could essentially just turn them all into chickens. If she wanted to, she could physically turn Thanos into a chicken and lock Thanos in a cage and just feed it seeds every day. That's what she could do if she wanted to. And so I just think it's great that we might actually see all that come to light, all those powers.
Yeah. I mean, I'm going to offer an opinion contrary to what you said. JB said there that he thinks episode 3 might be his least favourite. of the ones that we've talked about so far, for me it was my most favourite because I think it started to add so much more context to what was happening. Like at the end when we see Geraldine, did you say she was called?
Mm-hmm.
She is thrown through that force field that we didn't know actually existed at this point. It started to tell us that there was an outside world. And for all there's maybe a bit more to it, maybe she left not fully understanding what was going on. She's like, you know, Wanda's doing this. Again, we're going to discuss a few theories there, but it told us the bigger premise as to, look, there's this world outside. It looks like, for whatever reason, Wanda's created this force field. We know Vision died in Infinity War, so if we're putting, you know, 2 and 2 together there, maybe she's trying to create a world where she still has him. Is this her imagination? What's quite going on here? We're not sure. But, you know, you're starting to understand things a bit more in a way that maybe episode 1 and 2, I feel like when we first watched them, I think JB said I have more questions than I do answers. For me, episode 3 started giving some of those answers.
It also left us with questions, but one thing I really like about it, and it's like a landmark time where it's like, oh my gosh, like I almost fear for Wanda and Vision at the end of that, you know, in the week waiting for episode 4, because there's one thing having, you know, taking a town hostage or whatever she's done by making a false reality. She could probably do that from the comfort of an Avengers basement or out in the middle of nowhere. And obviously there was that kind of radio thing in the second episode, you know, Wanda who's doing this to you, but that could be a self-conscious, that could be a number of things. But when Geraldine is thrown out of this world, instantly we see like about 5 cars running over to her, there's people surrounding her, there's a helicopter in the air, and it's the first time that it's like, oh, this has got the eyes of people. There are people outside of this world with their like curiosity set on it, and so it almost makes you fear for Wanda and Vision because it's like there's going to be people that want to interfere. Yeah,
like, you know, it's not just Wanda and Vision now. There's people that want to shut this down, they just don't know how to. So while we are on that 70s little time span, we are heading over to look at the Funko Pop for that time. Now we see there is a pregnant Wanda 70s Funko. Bit disappointed that there isn't a matching Vision one. We did kind of envisage pairing them all up, but hey, we can't do that. It is a good Funko nevertheless. Like, you know, there is the detail of her being pregnant. The outfit is, you know, pretty much a perfect replica of the one from that episode. JB was talking before if there was any other Funkos that would have added to the time period of the 50s. For me, I'd like to have seen one of Geraldine, you know.
Oh, like the 70s?
Yeah, with her 70s look.
Yeah, I would have liked a 70s Vision and a Geraldine, because obviously Geraldine is, gosh, who are they? They're a Rambo. They're either, I don't think they're Monica Rambo, but they're a Rambo. And they're obviously very important. In the comics, they become Photon, they appeared in Captain Marvel. And so to have a 70s variant of a character that's eventually going to be a bit more developed would have been cool as well. That's kind of it. I'd have loved like a little Billy and Tommy Funko. That would have been so cute. But I can't really blame them for not doing that. But I think definitely 70s Vision, 70s Geraldine. Because honestly, the 70s Wanda, I think maybe because they're not paired up, or maybe because it's not as of an aesthetic as, say, a comic book accurate look or a kind of black and white look that's paired up. It's the only one that we haven't really considered getting.
Yeah, it's the only one we've not ordered. But I think that'll change in the future. I imagine we'll order that quite soon, because they are just so good and it'd be great to have the full collection. So then we move on to episode number 4, which was We Interrupt This Program, and this was an episode like none we had seen so far. This is the outside world, and we are finally starting to see what exactly is going on. So we see Geraldine entering what is going to be referred to as the Hex. We see the return of a few familiar faces, which JB was really pleased to see.
Yeah, I think, and it opens up with, I think, at least in the top 5 of my favourite Marvel moments of all time, counting the films, because it shows you it shows you people coming back from the snap.
But in such a nice way. Like, so far, the only aftermath we've really seen from the snap is we saw a little bit at the end of Endgame, and we also have Spider-Man Far From Home. And that left us with quite a few questions, whereas actually seeing how they were reappearing in WandaVision, seeing those little fragments, like, accumulating, I mean, that just led to so many in-depth discussions at the dinner table of, like, how people came back after the snap, what would have happened if, say, for example, someone was stood where they were stood before, if the fragments moved to the left like particles.
Or even something ridiculous, like, if you were hoovering, like, where someone had snaps, like, so do you hoover the particles up? Did the particles just shift? It was weird though, but it showed such a chaotic look of that re-snap to the point where it probably caused as much damage as the initial snap. Because I've always gone, like, obviously there's going to be people snapped away that were driving cars or something like that, whereas, like, just imagining what would happen on a busy motorway if the reverse happened, if people suddenly materialised in the middle of the road, or in, like, cars or, like, unoccupied seats, or just something like that. The amount of confusion that would have happened, it would have been chaos.
Yeah. Or even, like, babies who couldn't say, look, this was my life before, this is who I'm looking for.
Yeah, I would love a Disney Plus or any type of TV show about the snap. So it could start with setting up characters, the snap could happen, and it could be a TV show literally about the 5-year gap, and then it would go into, like, dealing with the snap back, and afterwards, like, I could literally watch hours and hours and hours of, you know, people getting snapped away, people getting snapped back, and this is the first sign of that, and I absolutely adore it. It is hands down one of my favourite Marvel scenes of all time.
And of course, like we said, it adds more context, so we can actually see where that voice, Wanda, who's doing this to you, came from. We start to put together all the moments that we were seeing in the first 3 episodes, and kind of getting a little grip of the situation. It does start to, you know, insinuate that Wanda, in fact, has created all of this. There are other theorists out there that say other characters might have more of a hand in this than anyone's really, you know, worked out so far. Agnes is quite a suspicious character to most. I mean, what's your theories for Agnes, or do you think it is all Wanda?
Well, they're one of the people that they don't have, like, Sword didn't have a real life profile for them. Like, there's a few people there that have real life names who were cast as roles in the Hex, but Agnes is just Agnes. There doesn't seem to be any background on them. But I love the team that they've assembled for the outside world. So you've got Monica Rambeau. Yes, Monica Rambeau. You've got Jimmy Woo and Darcy. So they're like, that's a crossover in and of itself, with Jimmy Woo originating from Ant-Man and the Wasp, Monica Rambeau originating from Captain Marvel, and of course Darcy originating from the Thor movies. And they've not been seen for a while, so it was good to see them back. They never annoyed me, that, like, I know that they annoyed a lot of people, but at the same time, I definitely didn't miss their presence in Thor Ragnarok, probably because Thor Ragnarok was just very different, it was very fun, but I definitely enjoyed seeing them in Thor 1 and 2. I think they added quite a lot of comedic value to that, and that's what they do here. She seems to be a lot more competent. I think those 3 work really well together. I could watch a spin-off about those 3.
Indeed. And indeed they will come on to work more together in future episodes.
But it's weird because... So episode 4 was an important episode.
Yeah.
But if we look at the Funko Pops, it's not like they've hidden things, to keep things spoiler free. So we've got 50s, 70s, and then we've got Halloween Funko Pops,
6.
which is episode 6. So it skipped out any Funko Pops for episode 4 and 5, which is... I don't know if that's disappointing or not, because obviously in terms of Wonder and Vision, episode 4 really doesn't do anything new for them, except for basically showing how how Sword is the voice of the audience. They're watching the sitcoms going, why sitcoms? why is this? Is Vision really alive?
Yeah, I guess the only thing they could have done, which you speculated on, is you see, Vision when he was about to be experimented on and stuff like that. That's revealed in episode 4. And you said that's one Funko that they could have done.
Yeah, like that kind of Thanos aftermath vision. Oh, yes, that would be really creepy, but I'd like that.
Very creepy.
I just don't understand. They could have had a Monica Rambeau Funko Pop, or a Jimmy Woo Funko Pop, or a Darcy Funko Pop, or I forget the name of that guy, Hayward, the kind of nasty boss. Even he could have been a Funko Pop, but none of them. There don't seem to be any Funko Pops, and I can't quite think why. The obvious thought is that it probably wouldn't sell as well as a Wanda and Vision. But I know that there's definitely some people that would have got it. I think we would have got some of them.
Definitely we would. And so yeah, that kind of is rounding up on episode number 4. So right now we're up to kind of understanding that this town has in fact been trapped in the Hex, that nobody can leave, nobody's aware of their life before. And so it's kind of, we've more or less got full context by episode number 4. So now it's kind of like, what's going to happen to that? And that's what we start to see with episode number 5, in that Billy and Tommy, I think they're called, did we say? Wiccan and Speed?
Yeah.
Are now starting to grow up.
See, here's the weird thing. Obviously, this is a massive episode, especially the end. But I think for all, episode 3 was my least favourite episode. I think this is probably my most forgettable episode, apart from that last bit. Maybe it was overshadowed, but just looking at like the thumbnail on Disney Plus now, it's the one that I could tell you the least about. Like, I couldn't give you a plot synopsis of the episode at all.
Okay, so I'd say if I was giving you like a plot synopsis for episode number 5, Wanda starts to become a lot more comfortable with her powers. I think she's even encouraging Vision to kind of change in front of Agnes, and he's kind of like, Wanda, what's going on here? Why are you doing this? We need to be more careful. And Wanda's like, no, it's fine, and starts to magic things up. And we start to see the boys having some powers as well, because they get this little puppy, and unfortunately the puppy dies, and they're like, oh mum, bring it back, you can bring it back. And she starts trying to explain to them that you can't use your powers to bring people back from the dead, but that is actually what she's done with Vision. So we're seeing the double standard there. Agnes kind of takes a bit like a childminder babysitter role sometimes with the boys, and tensions rise between Vision and Wanda quite considerably, because Vision's like realizes that Wanda's actually controlling these people. He starts with the person that he works with in the office and kind of removes the spell from him. And he's like, oh my goodness, what's going on? And Vision starts to work out that Wanda's not as innocent as she is portraying to be. And he says to her, Wanda, you can't control me like you can them. When in fact, we know that she is doing, because she took that body from the lab and she recreated Vision in her hex. So it's all very much just about exploring, I think, the extent of Wanda's powers, the building friction, which between Vision, where Vision's actually getting quite curious as to what's happening now, because he knows that things aren't as they're appearing at face value. The boys are growing up, and as we see that tension rising between Wanda and Vision, we see her control a little bit more. Like, we see the titles roll early in that episode because she's trying to bring the argument to an end. And then we have the bombshell at the end that left JB screaming when we see that set of silver hair from the back. And
okay, so obviously this is the moment that we see Pietro, Quicksilver, but it's actually the one from the X-Men. So I absolutely love this.
She recast Pietro.
I love this reveal because the back of the hair leaves ambiguous, but you know exactly who it is. So the doorbell rings, it shows the back of the head, and I'm freaking out because this would be the first time that Quicksilver's appeared since Age of Ultron. So I'm like, oh my gosh, they brought Quicksilver back. And so they've already raised your excitement levels to like 90-95%, maybe even 100%, and then it shows you the face, and it goes from already raising your excitement to making it on overload. So I was already like, oh my gosh, it's Quicksilver, and then I was like, oh my gosh, it's that Quicksilver, and I was screaming, I was shouting, because I love that Quicksilver. I enjoy the one from Age of Ultron as well, but I've got so many cool memories of watching. It's not Aaron Taylor Johnson, it's Evan Peters in Quicksilver in the X-Men, doing those cool scenes where they're like running slow motion to like pop songs. But I've actually got a theory about this, and it's kind of a goofy theory. I don't think it holds up whatsoever, but it was just interesting to me that there's like a precedent set in this world that anything that enters into the Hex gets the vibe of what the sitcom is in the time, so everything's kind of given that 70s vibe once it's in the Hex. So the kind of advanced Stark drone becomes like an aeroplane thing, the helicopter was like a drone and it was just a toy, the hazmat suit became the beekeeper outfit. So things do get sitcomed when they go into the Hex, and so I don't know how Scarlet Witch would have got a hold of Pietro's body or whatever. Like, I don't know. But the Quicksilver that we see is from X-Men, obviously. But they were introduced in Days of Future Past when they travel back to the 70s, which I think is what this episode is parodying, the 70s style. Maybe the latter end of the 70s, we're not too sure, because we'll get onto that, but people aren't sure where we're at the moment. I think it's possible that Quicksilver was made into that Quicksilver because that's what a 70s Quicksilver would be. I don't know, it just to me is a bit coincidence that in the 70s they bring back the adaptation of the Quicksilver as they were presented in the 70s. So I don't know if there's anything in that, but it's interesting. And it was, of course, the standout moment.
It was indeed. And here's where we start to question Wanda's powers a little bit, because she did genuinely seem surprised at his return. In the argument when the doorbell rang, she's like, no, Vision, I didn't do that. And she does genuinely seem surprised. And also, why would she have recast? It was quite a confusing moment that does maybe lead us to believe that not all of this may be entirely influenced by Wanda, but that's something that we can kind of start to theorise about in future episodes. So that was where this episode wrapped up. Moving on to the little Funko Pop section here, I would have loved a Quicksilver Funko as part of this.
Yeah, honestly, I do think it's coming. I definitely do. It's just, I think they're going to save that till at least, gosh, I don't know, maybe just after the finale airs, but I think they're going to save that because it would be such... I stayed spoiler free. I didn't know anything. I didn't even know there was even talks of Quicksilver being in it. Obviously, it's like a kind of obvious thing. If it's going into Wanda's kind of mental state, obviously Quicksilver's going to be there at some point, but I didn't know. And I just think it would be such a shame if we saw, the 50s Wanda and 50s Vision on Amazon or something, and we ordered it. It arrived while episode 3 and 4 was coming on, and I looked on the back of it, and it was Quicksilver there.
Yeah, that would have been awful.
I think that would have been such a shame.
So we are now moving on to the most recent episode, which is all new Halloween Spooktacular. And JB was really excited by this one because we see them dressing up in their old comic book outfits. And so there's a lovely reference point there that he really enjoyed. We also see Wiccan and Speed are starting to develop their powers. And also we see, as mentioned in the episode number 5, Vision's suspicions are reaching an all-time high when he lies to Wanda on Halloween and in fact goes to investigate what is actually happening in this world. And he finds a rather strange section of the neighbourhood. So, JB, let's get your opinions on episode 6.
Oh, so episode 6 I think is one of my favourites. I think it's the one that stays consistently kind of good. It doesn't really reach a peak like the last one did. It's just, well, I guess it does to an extent. But yeah, I love how they took the time to use the Halloween costumes to be comic book accurate. Obviously, I love Scarlet Witch's outfit because of, obviously there's Guy reasons, but also because it is literally comic book accurate. Like, if you looked at an old Scarlet Witch comic book, that's how it is, and it's just good how they've used that opportunity to make it like that. So, like, Wolverine, for example, they have an iconic suit that's black and yellow. And in the whole entire time that Hugh Jackman played Wolverine from, I think, 2000 to 2018, 2019, they never got a chance to wear that costume because, one, it would kind of look ridiculous in the world that they were building up. There was a deleted scene in the Wolverine, but he never wore it. And so just the fact that they could make an actual realistic reason for Scarlet Witch and Vision to be comic book accurate is absolutely amazing. And I do think they look really good in their costumes because they've not made it so professional that it looks like, okay, we're recreating it for the purpose of it being used. They've made it look just naturally Halloween-y, and I just think it's absolutely fantastic. And I think Wanda looks better than Vision in this scenario because I think the Vision that they have is pretty much comic book Vision, right? Like, they don't change him that much. Obviously, it looks different, but there's a big difference between that and obviously Scarlet Witch has never looked anything like this before. Like, they've definitely done a lot to modernize her in the films.
Yeah.
And so it is a very big difference. But also, here's another thing that I think they're going to add in. They also give Quicksilver his comic book accurate look as well. They kind of do his hair up. Oh, and they do that iconic kind of lightning bolt stripe. Yeah. Oh, that was amazing. I really do like that. The only disappointing thing is I would have liked to have been able to almost play like Where's Wally with like this episode, in that obviously Scarlet Witch looks good, Vision looks good, Quicksilver looks good, but there's a kind of sea of children dressed up, and so it would have been a bit nice to have, I guess, someone in a Captain Marvel costume or a Captain America costume in the background, just for you to kind of say, okay, that's this reference. Clearly, she's going from memory, but I don't know. They just kind of use generic monster costumes, which is alright. I think this is one of my favourite episodes, to be honest.
Mine too, because the end of this episode really does, for me, hit some kind of climax with the series, and it's kind of like, oh my gosh, the conclusion is near, because like I was saying, Vision is really suspicious of Wanda now. He starts to walk to the edge of the hex, and he finds Agnes in her car, and it's almost like she doesn't know where to go because she's not allowed to leave the hex, so she's almost confused. And when he takes her out of that mind space, she's like, oh my goodness, you're an Avenger, but wait, you're dead. Am I dead? And Vision has literally just heard that he's supposed to have died, and he's still like powers on. He reaches the edge of the hex, he tries to fight that force field, and of course that's when the son that would be Wiccan's, the powers kicks in, and he's hearing what's going on and trying to like get his dad the help. And Vision more or less reaches the end of the hex, he sees the outside, but he has been dragged back. And I'm curious to see what is going to happen to him now. He actually knows. He knows there's more outside. He has seen what's outside. And now we are progressing, I believe, to 1 hour episodes from here on in. So there is some big stuff going to happen.
But in terms of Agnes being in the car, would you say that clears her of any suspicion? Like, if she's in that mindset that the office workers are in, if she was confused and she has memories of the outside world, like, she would have been trapped. Does that clear her of any suspicion or any involvement? For
me, I've never had any suspicion of Agnes, and I'm going to sound like maybe a bit crazy here, but I've always thought that it was Wanda, like, and to be quite honest, if I had the abilities and the same thing had happened to you as happened to Vision, I think I'd have done the same thing. I'd have wanted to create a world where I could still have you near me, and that's what she did. And I feel like in such a time of prominent distress, she's been, that's been snapped away, she saw Vision die. I feel like if I could have, I'd have tried to do the same thing, so I don't blame her at all, really.
I wonder what TV shows you'd put us in.
Scooby-Doo, maybe?
Scooby-Doo. Oh, I'd love to be in Scooby-Doo. Doctor Who.
Yes. So I've never had any suspicion for Agnes, and I still remain with that. And we see furthermore at the end of this episode, in this amazing, amazing moment when Wanda's pushing the hex out, she is dragging more things into it. More buildings are adapting into the style of the world that she's created. It is incredible. We see people trying to outrun how that hex is stretching. You know, there was that little team that JB said he loves working together, of those 3 people that are trying to work out what's going on. We see that there is a bad guy on the outside as well that maybe has more involvement or more knowledge of what's going on inside than he's letting on. It has reached an all-time climax. Like I said, we are going to 3-hour-long episodes next, and I can't begin to fathom what's going to happen. Ultimately, I think it is going to have to end with them breaking the hex. I just don't know how they're going to do it.
It's interesting though, but they've got someone on the inside now, technically. Obviously, they'll be like cast as someone, but Darcy got, you know, who was handcuffed to that car, has been caught up in the hex now, which is interesting. And I just love seeing all like the transformation, like all the kind of sword workers get turned into clowns. What was like a professional like research lab has now become like a big top circus, which I hope they utilize in the next episode, because it'd just be cool to have that little scene there. Here's the thing that people are confused about, and I'm kind of confused as well. So in the theatre behind Wanda and I think Quicksilver, when they're like trick-or-treating with Wiccan and Speed, there's movies playing, one of them being the modern-ish version of The Parent Trap, which I think was early 90s and stuff. But it was also The Incredibles, which was like 2002, 2004. So it's either they've skipped out the 90s or they're fusing the 90s with the early 2000s. So it's a bit confusing, but I'm a bit suspicious of Quicksilver in this episode, because obviously there's questions about why they look different.
Yeah.
But it also seems like Quicksilver's probing for information. He's asking questions like, you know, where were the kids before this episode, or like,
how did you start this? And she says she doesn't know.
Yeah, and it's almost, I don't know, obviously I don't want to get too tinfoil hatty, but it's almost like this kind of Hayward sword agent who's trying to find out information, or someone's trying to find out more information, and so they've sent in someone that could pass off as trustworthy to like get information from Wanda.
Yeah.
That's almost what I'm thinking of. But in terms, okay, obviously they're gonna do a Halloween Quicksilver Funko. And I've already purchased that. That's already done.
And for the children as well, because they start to take on their kind of outfits then. Also, just picking up on something you were talking about of the time frames, I think it's going to be near its conclusion when they level up, because they're not too far off away from hitting the current time frame. And I'm wondering if that's kind of a limitation, that they can't go into the future. Because if it's in her world, she knows what the past looks like, so she's reliving the past, like from the 50s and so on. But because in her world she doesn't know what the future looks like, will there almost be some kind of wall when it hits the current day? So that's kind of one thing that I'm curious about. The other thing that I think is going to be really prominent now is Vision knows. I've said this before, but Vision knows now. There's an outside world. She's manipulating people, and he seems like a good level-headed guy. I think even though he's found out that he's supposed to be dead, he said that, you know, when he is, don't experiment with him, just leave him. And I feel like that's what he's going to want. I feel like he's going to be ultimately trying to encourage Wanda to bring this to an end.
And he's good, because literally he gets out of the hex, and he the first thing he does is ask for help, you know, for like the residents of the town.
Yeah, he seems great. I'm loving Vision.
It's just a bit difficult, because I don't think Vision will know by the start of episode 7. I think that Wanda's going to do all she can in her power to rewrite his memory, or to maybe put him more under the spell that the other townspeople are in, where they're just oblivious to the world. I think eventually he'll remember, but I'm not sure if they'll tackle that in episode 7 entirely.
Furthermore on that though, there was that beekeeper thing when she managed to rewrite the past. Could she rewrite it happening that he left the
Potentially.
hex?
That is a possibility, but then would she rewrite the expansion of the hex?
it's just so much. I'm so looking forward to seeing what happens in the next few
There's
episodes.
so many theories. Like, obviously, Monica Rambeau becomes Photon, a superhero, and they're like, you've been in the Hex so many times that it's rewriting you. So, if the Hex expands to, like, a large portion of the world, that could be a way to introduce mutants and X-Men into the entire thing. Like, I saw one, like, meme on Twitter that anyone that's been in the Hex and has been changed by it will be called the Hex-Man. And I think that's kind of funny.
Yeah, that's funny.
Hex. But, oh my gosh. In terms of the future, like you say, they're going to hour-long episodes, I think. And there's 3 more, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah.
I know one of them is going to be parodying The Office, which I'm really excited about. Because I really like that show. So, I don't know. In terms of the future, I think you're right. I think it's going to end with Vision maybe trying to convince Wanda to let things go. Perhaps Doctor Strange will get involved. We really don't know. I mean, in this kind of comic book, Scarlet Witch realizes that Wiccan and Speed aren't real, and that's what kind of makes her go, like, villainous.
Yeah, see, for me, she's a woman on the edge. She's seen Vision die. She has been snapped away. There's just been so much happen to her. For her to realise that those 2 children that she loves is again just part of her imagination, because presumably they're not going to be real. Vision's dead. You know, you'd think there'd be no actual form of, like, a child. So it's kind of like, yeah, imagine what's going to happen when she has to come to the realisation that all this is in her imagination.
But it's murky. It really is murky, because if Wiccan and Speed aren't real, I mean, they must be real, right? In that the 2 babies that were in episode 3 were babies in the outside world. They just weren't hers. Similarly, Wiccan and Speed have to be like 6-7-year-old kids in the world, just not hers. They must have just been cast as that. So there's a lot to speculate on, and it's a bit of a shame that this is kind of all the episodes that we've been presented with, because obviously this is a special episode of the podcast. It's a Valentine's special. I'm not sure when we're going to be talking about this next on the channel, if at all, but I guess if anyone listening to this wants to hear a follow-up on the next episodes, please do comment below, because I'm actually keen to talk about this on the channel, because it is good, and it reminds me a lot of the early days of the channel when we used to do the Friday film fight. So I'm excited, and you wanted that to return, didn't you?
I did.
So I guess Funko Pops. We've spoken about the Halloween costumes, but what are you thinking about these Funko Pops as they are? I mean, obviously they're a good representation, but which one's your favourite?
My favourite would be Wanda from the 50s. I just think it's a perfect replica of, you know, what they created in the series, and just the uniqueness of what they created in going back to the 50s, I guess.
Yeah, I can't decide which Funko I prefer, the Wanda Halloween or the Vision Halloween. But one thing I love about them is that they've set these 2 up especially to almost be part of a set, because they've both got these little trick-or-treat baskets. And so I'm just really looking forward to, like, setting them up in cute little poses where they're just trick-or-treating together. It's really cool to see, and I'm really hyped for episode 7. I am absolutely hyped. Now, in terms of things going forward, in terms of Disney Plus, I guess the last thing I'd like to mention briefly is, obviously there's some upcoming projects. The 2 notable ones are Falcon and the Winter Soldier and Loki. So from what you've seen, which one are you the most excited for? And if people wanted to, which one would you discuss on the channel, if any?
I mean, I'd discuss them both on the channel. I'm going to watch them both. Oh my goodness. So I'm looking forward to Falcon and the Winter Soldier. That actually looks like it's going to be really good. Loki, I do think the Winter Soldier was an underrated character. I really, really like them. Loki, on the other hand, I think is far too overrated. I know you really like them, but I just see them as Thor's insignificant brother.
Oh gosh, shade.
So I'm not looking forward to it really, but I'm gonna watch it, and it's probably gonna be a lot better than I'm expecting it.
I mean, I'm not looking forward to it necessarily for the Loki character, because I feel that their story very much came to an end in Infinity War. They had that redemption arc, but the one thing I'm so looking forward to is that it dives straight into the multiverse, and I love things to do with multiverse and like, you know, different scenarios. Like the What If series is also coming out. That would be good. But I just really want to visit other realities. I think that's going to be a really good time.
Interesting. Certainly interesting.
So yeah, I guess that does it for this episode of the 5-Star Talk podcast. Again, we are absolutely adoring WandaVision, and if you are too, please comment down below. Please let us know what your favourite episode is so far, and honestly, we really do want to get a conversation going in the comment section, so please subscribe to this channel for weekly content. We're going to be doing these shows every Sunday, so please like, comment and subscribe.
JB and Millie.
And happy Valentine's Day.